knowing what sets you apart from anybody else. So make yourself almost irreplaceable.
Sam Buitendag, Global Head of Commercial Excellence at Aerogen, born in South Africa, a mom of two, who worked in Germany for 6 years and moved to Ireland in 2021 to take up a VP level role at Aerogen. Welcome to GK Media Studios and thank you for joining me on Garry Talks.
Talent plus resilience is what gives you grit, and grit is what sets you apart from any other person in the corporate world that's on the same level as you. That will always shine through. In my first marriage, I was physically abused by my husband, and so it's been a case for me of really using what I've overcome in life and use that to build resilience that allows me to take on challenges that possibly other people aren't willing to take on.
What kind of advice can you give to someone who knows someone or who is that someone in that situation right now? This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Sam, thanks so much for coming into studio. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Garry. Thanks for having me.
I'm always mesmerized when I meet you and have a conversation with you because you're this fountain of information and you're always come across really passionate and enthusiastic what you're talking about and the areas that you're working in and developing and so on. So I think for anyone who's working in business and wants to get kind of motivation, insights, ideas of the way things are moving forward, maybe guidance in global reach and so on, this is definitely an episode well worth listening to. But I always feel it's good to establish an understanding of people and where they've come from. Hence, we go back to where they grew up and so on. So you're from South Africa. For those of us who have never been to South Africa, can you tell me what life was like growing up there, please?
I think really in the time that I grew up in South Africa, I'm literally the girl off a farm in Africa. It really was the ideal childhood for me because growing up on a farm, you had the freedom of outdoors, of the safety of playing outdoors, and just the richness that brings to a child's life and imagination, really.
And farm, what size are we talking about?
We were on a small holding, so only just 11 hectares, so not a massive farm at all by South African standards, and really grew up in an area that my grandfather actually owned pretty much the entire area, and with my mom being one of 8 children, sections of the farm were given to each child as they married out of the family. Mm-hmm. So I was really privileged to grow up in that environment. And then, of course, I think most people are aware of the history of South Africa. So I grew up in an environment that was really integrated, and in my childhood, there was no distinction between black and white. Mm-hmm. So I think also privileged from that point of view, so that when South Africa did eventually integrate, it wasn't a complex thing for me, although it was, in all honesty, quite complex for a lot of people in South Africa, growing up through the apartheid era and then growing through that and growing to a point where I was an employer. I was employing people in my position at the time of the new regime starting and really trying to bring people from previously disadvantaged backgrounds into the workforce. So it brought about some really interesting
But were you getting pushback
challenges
from people internally who just had a mindset that they grew up with, where they embraced this separation?
Honestly, yes. But as a leader in that business environment, you have to help your team overcome that, and you have to really set the culture of the company. And my firm belief is that the culture of your team is determined by the lowest form of behavior that you accept. As a leader. And so for me, it's really important that I set the example, and having grown up on a farm in an environment where the black folk that were working on the farm, their kids were my friends. So I really didn't see a distinction. And so I felt that experience, I could use that experience to help them understand why this is important, why it's important not only for us as a company, but for us as a country to integrate and to really close the gap that had been created, not by us, not by our generation. Of course, it was by generations before us, but we did have a responsibility to close the gap, I felt.
Yeah.
And so I took that responsibility as a leader very seriously and really found amazing talents. And because I have a passion for developing people in business, still a passion that I have today, 32 years into my career, that was a great challenge for me and something that I drew a lot of joy from in seeing the development when you give people opportunity to reach their potential.
And how do you go from, growing up on a farm to working now at a global level? Like, what was your first integration into the workplace environment?
So my very first job was as a junior lecturer in university, lecturing in biokinetic studies. So that's really anatomy, physiology, kind of anthropometry, all of the science type subjects. And I was approached just 2 years into that job by a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, which is still one of the top 3 pharmaceutical companies in the world. And they said, we're looking for somebody with your profile that really has a deep understanding of anatomy and physiology and can sell clinically rather than, taking somebody that sold shoes before and put them into a pharmaceutical environment. And so I said, I'm actually an academic. I don't think I can sell a thing. Yeah. And they said, well, if you would consider it for a second, this would be your starting salary. And it was literally 15 times more than what I was earning as a junior lecturer at the time. So
wow.
I kind of said, let me think about it. Yes, I'll give it a go. Okay. And, really took to it as a duck to water, as they say. Absolutely loved the opportunity to use both my love for teaching and my clinical knowledge to really teach clinicians, GPs, specialists, pharmacists at that point, teach them something that they did not know about patient outcomes or how they could improve patients' lives or change their prescribing habits to the benefit of patients. So absolutely loved it from day one. And I've really come right from the lowest level of the commercial field, just worked my way up with lots of blood, sweat and tears, which is something I got from my father, I think, as a work ethic.
It's interesting because your approach of going in, selling something to someone was the outcome it will have, how it will benefit the person you're writing the prescription for and so on, which is interesting. It's taking them right to the Z of the equation. You mentioned blood, sweat and tears. Can you remember moments that brought tears to your eyes during that process?
There were, I think, 27 of my 32 years of experience has been in the orthopedic space. And just historically, orthopedics is a man's world. And so there were times of real frustration as a woman in a man's world to try and establish your competency, and really establish your position both in corporate, but also in your customer's world. And there are frustrations that come with that, but so much learning that comes from going through that experience that I would never change it for anything. When you have to fight harder to prove that you are competent, when you have to fight harder to prove that you are the trusted partner to the customer, you learn a lot through that process in terms of how do you build trust with anybody, whether it be a superior in the corporate sense or whether it's with your customer. And I kind of, from experience, have realized that there are 3 C's to trust. The one is competence. The next one is consistency. And then the third one, and probably the most important, is character. And so having those difficult experiences and learning through them has shown me how to strengthen character, how to always act with integrity, how to communicate with people so that they can see there's a consistency in the way that you treat them and also in the way that you apply your knowledge and to your competence in your job. And then ensuring that you are competent in what you're doing and you are, in the medical and pharmaceutical industry, you really have to to know your stuff. You got to know that the technical advice that you're giving to an end user of the product, whether that's a pulmonologist or an orthopedic surgeon, that you're giving them the right information, or the patient will be, will bear the consequence of your incompetence. So that's something that's always really been important to me. And it's really paid off in life from when I became a people leader. Leading people, your team looks for those same 3 C's in you to place their trust in you as a leader.
And as a woman then, how do you maintain your own person without kind of diluting yourself to fit into, quote unquote, a man's world, where you don't try to become one of the blokes. You just stay as who you are and believe in yourself.
I think it has a lot to do with those 3 C's. So I've always just ensured that my competence is above and beyond what is required for my current job function. A lot of it for me personally is knowing who you are as a person, being really sure of that and being confident in who you are and what you have to offer. What is your value that you're offering to your team? If you are a people leader, what is the value you're offering to your organization, just in general, in your position? And then just having the confidence to stand firm in that and do it with integrity so that your character shines through.
And just break it down to me, like, how does one find out what their value is?
I think there's 2 parts to it for me. The first one is the expectation of the organization. Are they clear on what they expect from you in your role? And do they communicate that to you effectively? And that's something I take very seriously as a leader, that I believe every success starts with a very clear expectation. So every success that my team has achieved, they've known from the start what I've expected from them. And I do know from feedback from our team that my expectations are generally quite high, because I believe in people's potential. So I think, Garry, knowing me a little bit, that I do expect a lot from people, because I want them to believe in the art of the impossible with me. Mm-hmm. And when you create clear expectations and people understand that, then they will perform to that expectation. And I have not been disappointed. In my teams that I've worked with in the past. So I firmly believe that that's really important. And then the other part of knowing your value is really knowing what sets you apart from anybody else. So make yourself almost irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. And I know that in reality, the corporate world will tell you that everybody is replaceable. But quite honestly, that's not been my experience. So right from when I was a sales representative, right at the bottom of the commercial ladder, I've always made sure that I've displayed and communicated my value by showing the success that I can achieve for the company with their support. Mm-hmm. And once I know what the expectations are, my nature is such that I'm determined to exceed every one of your expectations that you have of me, So almost to the point of being destructive at times. So I have to watch it. I have to be careful about, what kind of pressure I place on myself to achieve those goals. Yeah. But it's just been the way that I was raised, I guess.
Yeah, but ever since I met you a few years ago for the first time, and since the first time I've met you, you have, and I think it was when you had just recently moved to Ireland, but there's this huge drive within you. And where does that come from?
I think I am, as a person, I'm motivated by a challenge. And I've had to overcome challenges in my life. On a personal note, just for a second, in my first marriage, I was physically abused by my husband. And so, there've been those type of traumatic experiences that I've had to overcome in life. And however, as with all the challenges that I faced being a woman in a man's world, those experiences build resilience. Mm. And that's what gives you grit. Talent plus resilience is what gives you grit, and grit is what sets you apart from any other person in the corporate world that's on the same level as you. That will always shine through. And so, that's kind of how I've found meaning in the difficult things that I've had to go through in my life, is to use that to build your resilience and to show your grit. And so it's been a case for me of really using what I've overcome in life and use that to build resilience that allows me to take on challenges that possibly other people aren't willing to take on. It's also made me an optimist, and not optimist in the sense of always seeing blue skies and rainbows, but true optimism is being able to see multiple solutions to any one single problem. So I'm always looking around the obstacle to see how can we get around it, and I've developed a sense of there is always a way to make this work. And I think that, fueled by my creativity, really just drives me. I'm constantly thinking of creative ways to get around things, or to be better at things, or to do something that's innovative that no one else has done, which is kind of, where I'm at with Aerogen at the moment, where we've truly created something unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will get to that. But just, I'm conscious as well that we could have listeners who know someone who has been involved in domestic abuse. I know people myself who have been involved in domestic abuse, or there may be someone listening who is in that situation at the moment. And just for someone who has gone through it and come out the other side and successfully, in terms of what you have achieved for yourself and for your family in life, what kind of advice can you give to someone who knows someone, or who is that someone in that situation right now?
It's a difficult situation, particularly if you are a woman. I know that there are men that are also physically abused, but particularly for women, we tend to take on responsibility, and we tend to take on the shame that comes with being physically abused. So that's always my first point of advice, is to stop, to pause in the situation, because your instincts will always tell you, whether it's psychological or emotional or physical abuse, your instincts will tell you that was not okay. Whatever happened right there was not okay. And my encouragement is really to stop in that moment, listen to that intuition, listen to that voice that's telling you that this behavior is not okay, to then realize that it's not your fault. You are not responsible for somebody else's wrongful behavior towards you. That is on them. It's not on you. And then to take care of your own physical and psychological safety first, no matter how hard it is, because generally in those situations you are really broken down over time. And perhaps you don't even notice how broken down you are. But to realize that if you reach inside, you do have the strength to stand up to that behavior, to that person, take a stand and say, this is not okay and I'm not tolerating it anymore. And then take care of your own safety, the safety of your family, as I had to do, and put their safety and your safety first. And, in your mind, you have to kind of separate yourself from the responsibility that you feel towards your abuser, and perhaps even still that you believe you love that person still. You have to set that aside for your own safety and your children's safety, and create distance. Yeah. Because only once that distance is created and you are separated from that constant breaking down psychological trauma or the physical trauma of it, only then can you begin to see the wood for the trees, see the situation for what it is, recognize that it's a problem with the abuser and not with you, and then begin the healing process from there.
Great. And do you mind me asking what age your children were when you separated from?
My son is from my first marriage, and he was only 4 at the time.
And he's in his 30s now, and you have a daughter as well?
I have a daughter, 20s? Yes, from my second marriage, and she's 20.
Excellent. So what brought you then from South Africa to Germany? Because we go back with the company you're offered, like, was it 15 times what you were getting in the university? So was
That's
it a
right.
paycheck that brought you to Germany again, or?
In a sense, yes, but it was more around career development. So I had been working for a company for 10 years and had reached a general management level. And so that was the highest position I could hold for the company in South Africa, and was managing the whole of sub-Saharan Africa at that point. And then they really liked what I had done. So I had taken the business, which was managed by a distributor for 37 years before they employed me. And they employed me essentially to take the business direct in South Africa. And we just, the team did phenomenally well out of that. And then they recognized that I would have the potential to take a commercial excellence role in head office, and recognized that just with travel, it was impossible to do that from South Africa. So they offered me then a promotion within that same company to head office in Germany, in a tiny little village called Wehrheim.
Okay.
So that was how I came to be in Germany, which was an amazing learning experience once again, to really be in a completely different culture, having to learn a new language from scratch. We did not have one word of German before moving to Germany. And so there was a lot of learning and development. And I also had the opportunity to then truly manage globally and learn what it takes to manage cross-culturally, how to matrix manage.
What does that mean, actually, matrix management?
So that's where you don't have people reporting to you directly or indirectly. So it's generally people in different departments across the business, but you have to influence and manage them to achieve your goals. So they have to contribute, and you've got to get them to work with you without being their line manager.
Okay.
Which is challenging, but a really fun environment to work within.
I was reading your LinkedIn profile and I was like, I don't understand half of the words that are in this. So highly skilled thought leader in global commercial excellence, sales enablement, commercial transformation, both direct and channel partner commercial teams, SME on enablement systems, integration, strategy and vision, leading to proven organization-wide business impacts on both the top line and bottom line, skilled in global cross-functional and matrix management, a high-performance team. This just seems like a busy and chaotic type lifestyle and job. But yeah, it is this thing of, I'm fascinated by, of someone in a global role. What does that look like when there's an organization with hundreds in it and you're trying to get everyone, in the steering in the ship in the right direction to achieve that overall thing without being, as you said, a line manager dealing nearly on a one-by-one or a small team basis all the time with people?
Well, for me, it's really fun. It is a huge challenge. And when I speak to people in my function across different organizations, because I'm an advocate for some of the technology companies like Salesforce and Seismic across the world that are really huge companies across the globe, they use me to advocate to their prospective clients. And when I speak to them, I realize that this is something that's not well understood at all today. And I think it's because it's the long, hard blood, sweat and tears way of achieving success, because you have to change human behavior. And that's one of the most challenging things in business today, and especially when you have to change human behavior at scale. So the question is, how do you get everybody giving the customer the same message at the same level of quality to the right customer at the right place for where the customer is in their buying journey at the same time in every corner of the world? That is the challenge. And it really is a massive challenge until you understand what I've coined for myself and for our organization as the behavioral change success formula, which I've only just developed after 32 years of experience of, selling myself, of being a sales manager, commercial business leader. I really feel that now I have enough experience around sales psychology, particularly, to really understand what it takes what the seller needs and what the sales manager needs for them to really achieve their highest potential, achieve their highest success. But from an organizational point of view, to really drive strategy, you have to have everybody doing the same thing at the same time. Yeah. And so how my experience has helped is I've been able to build a tech stack. So how do you put your technology, the software, the technology, the enablement tools that are available in the market today, how do you put those together, and how do you make those software products that are provided by different companies, unrelated companies, how do you take them and make them speak to one another so that you can actually get the data that you need and put the workflows in place that drive those behaviors for you, so that it's the platform that the sellers and the sales managers are operating on every day. They don't even know that when they just click the next thing to do what they need to do every day in their job, they're actually following a workflow that has been predetermined by you, so that you are getting them to portray and act out the behaviors that you know are imperative to get the business impacts and the success for them as an individual, but collectively then for the whole organization. And that's the secret to it.
So you need to figure out the success journey of a sale, from the pitch to completion as such within the organization, which, has various ups and downs till you figure it out clearly. But then you have to be able to disseminate that through the organization so that is followed perfectly as well. And it's interesting seeing the integration and the enablement of the different softwares. So softwares we'd be talking about would be ones that would help in terms of, customer engagement or retention or communication, sales, documentation. It's kind of finding, as you say, like all the key softwares out there that help with the sales and marketing process to integrate them then into a system that you have had to build for. Yeah, it's mad.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's perfectly doable. So that what every one of the vendors, so the software providers to us at one point in the last 2.5 years said to me, Sam, that's impossible. We've never done it before. Nobody's ever asked us to do that. Why do you want to do it? And so I had to help them also understand how this process works, where you have to start with knowing what the business impacts are that you want to achieve. So understanding the strategy, the global strategy of the company, putting that into a workable format so that you know which impacts do you want to achieve. Then you can determine which behaviors are going to drive those outcomes. And then you work backwards from there and say, okay, for these behaviors, I need the system to have these capabilities. And then from the capability set, then you work back to say, right, which software company, which vendor offers me these capabilities. And if they don't offer the capabilities that I've identified, then I need them to build them for me. Which has been amazing, because companies like Salesforce and Seismic, as large as they are as companies, they really cared about the fact that for our success, their system had to develop this capability. And they benefit from it too, because they can offer it to then future customers, other clients. But they've been really as invested in our success as I am. And that's been amazing to have that support and to be part of developing something that they didn't believe was possible. And we've shown them now with data, with real impact and business outcomes, and getting to the point that within our business we can now even predict causality. So we can say that when you do this and that and this with that customer at that point in their buying journey, this will be the outcome in this amount of time.
Wow.
And that's I think that's the holy grail.
Yeah. So when you joined Aerogen then was it 2021?
That's right.
So you traveled from Germany to Ireland during the glorious days of COVID, when you were lucky to be able to travel. We all remember those days and how difficult they were. But you're brought into an organization, an Irish medtech company that is scaling rapidly because of unfortunately, the side effects of COVID and the demand for their product. and you sit in at your desk. What are you told is needed of you?
Well, from day one, it was very clear, those expectations I was talking about. Our CCO said to me, well, we have never had an enablement or commercial excellence function in Aerogen ever before. So you're starting with pretty much zero, but we do expect you to put something in place that will triple our revenue in the next 3 years.
Wow.
So that was day one. And that was what I was told at my desk. And it was a little overwhelming at the time, but also incredibly exciting because I realized then, right, so this is the luxury position that I've worked for the last 30 years at that point, where I can create something that I know from experience will work, that will be easy to use, the user experience to bring about the sales enablement and marketing enablement of sales. I know that I can build something if I can find the right vendors that can provide the system's capabilities. I know that I can build this in a way that's going to work really well. And so, it was an opportunity to build a team where I could really cherry pick the team members that I wanted, but also for the capabilities that I needed within the team, and just create and have no legacy systems to fight against or habits that were created to fight against. And then thirdly, I had an organization which I didn't know at the time, but I know today for sure is an organization that's really open to change at the massive scale that I was requiring of them, because it's just, if you've had no enablement function before, then it's a massive behavioral change at the individual level. And I'm just fortunate that Aerogen's culture is such that they bought into why we needed to do this. They trusted me from the start, of course, I presented them with global benchmarking and global research to say, guys, if we try this, it's really likely to make you more successful as an individual in your territory. So
you
let's
did
give
your
it a go.
homework before you went.
Absolutely. I don't think that you can ask for that much change of an organization. It wouldn't be fair if you didn't at least give them some evidence of value to them. So, the equation that we live by at Aerogen and in our sales approach is that the pain of same needs to be greater than the pain of change. So staying the same must cost you more or be more painful for you as a sales representative in this case than going through the pain of learning multiple new systems and a completely new way of doing your daily work. And, for some of our sellers, they'd been selling for 20 years already, not all for Aerogen, but we had sellers that were really experienced and also successful in their own right, that were saying, Sam, I've been really successful in my entire career for 20 years. Why do I need to do this now? Yeah. So there's always that human resistance.
Of course.
To change. I mean, we're all resistant to change to some degree, but if you can show them the value early on, and I had to really honestly ask them, just trust me. This is what the data says. If we try and do this, we should all be more successful than we were yesterday. And so they trusted me. And of course, then very early on, because of their commitment and their adoption of all the systems, at the 9-month mark after launch, we already had enough. We had a critical mass of data within the Aerogen system with Aerogen sellers to show them their actual success, and Aerogen's actual global success. And that's, there's no more value than that, than putting more incentive dollars or euros in the back pocket of a seller.
How close are you 3 years in now to that triple figure?
So we are close, and we are ahead of schedule.
Okay,
actually, to reaching that point. There were some business decisions that were taken that changed that target slightly, but in terms of what we initially set out to do and what we've achieved, we've really exceeded even my high expectations. So really happy with how this has gone and how beneficial it's proven to be to the teams.
Excellent. For those who aren't aware of Aerogen, it's a fantastic organization. You can listen to episode 49 of Garry Talks, Life is Failure and Success, where I have a great chat with the CEO, John Power. And I remember the first time that I met John, it was probably around 2020, he was getting an award from the Galway Chamber of Commerce. And he was just so cool, so laid back, made us feel like the most important people in the room, even though I'm sure there was 100 things going through his head at the time, especially during COVID and the huge demand that they were doing and trying to get product out there and trying to do it where everyone was getting it rather than just the highest bidder, which was trying to happen in the medtech industry. And I just, we've done various shoots at Aerogen over the years, and it's one company that always stands out to us because there's always a great culture there. There's great energy, there's great vibe. I've walked into other businesses before and it's like you're walking into the lion's den, or you see huddles of people, bitching about each other in the corner and so on. There's always a really, and I always think that comes from the top down. What was your experience like moving from Germany with your family to another country? Fair enough, you had the English, so you didn't have to learn a different language unless you wanted to try the Gaeilge. But what was that whole transition like for you?
I think from a personal point of view, as a parent, you're always worried about your children first. My daughter was going into Leaving Cert, into the 5th year of Leaving Cert when we moved across. And so, once I was happy that was settled, as a parent and in my private capacity, I was fine. Moving into the Irish culture has been lovely. Okay. It really the people are stereotypically nice. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So whereas we knew what to expect moving into Germany and we kind of were met with what we expected, it was pretty much the same for us in Ireland to really be welcomed and to also be surprised at how much innovation is really happening in Galway. And, with it being the innovation hub of medtech for Europe, it was a fascinating place.
Like, that's mad. You said that before we started recording, but like the west of Ireland and Galway in particular is considered now the medtech innovative hub for Europe. Yeah. Like, that's unreal.
And I think that's something that Ireland can be really proud of. And moving in specifically under John Power's leadership was also really, I want to say the word that's coming to mind is that it was a treat for me, to have somebody that has achieved so much in a relatively short space. The way that he's been innovative with the product that he's brought to market and the products that are coming to market are really incredibly exciting and are disruptively innovative, which is quite difficult to achieve in medtech today because there's been, just an absolute boom of development over the last 50 years that it's quite difficult to come up with something that is truly disruptive. And under John's engineering genius, we are on the cusp of launching something that is truly special. And just his, as you've said there already, his humility and the way that he leads, and possibly one of the things that I respect the most about John and his leadership, and which filters into the company, is that John is very certain of where his competencies lie within the business. And he's not one of those arrogant people that will not bring in the functions and the talent that he needs in the business to complement what it is that he does best. And that really gives me a lot of respect for somebody in a CEO position when they can recognize that for the good of the business. And I mean, since I've joined, Aerogen has more than doubled in size organically. So it's just, the company is in a massive growth phase, and which you wouldn't really expect at 25 years in. I mean, in some ways it's coming out of a startup type business, but in other ways it's really just exploding, and we continue to grow at high double-digit rate every single year based on John's expertise in what the market needs, and also, I guess, aligned to my approach to really try and take on the challenge of achieving the impossible. So what other people in medtech have thought was impossible up until this point, he's actually achieved achieved that from an engineering point of view. So I guess it's up to us to take that commercial when it becomes available. But it really is a culture where I feel that I've been given the freedom and the responsibility that comes with doing something and creating something completely new for the company. And John won't mind me saying, because he's always joking about it, that when I had moved my family over from Germany and we were already all in the country and I went into the office, John kind of said to me, Sam, I know that the CCO has just employed you, but I don't even know what commercial excellence is. What is it that you do? Why have we employed you? And I was a little taken aback at the time, thinking, wow, I've just moved my whole family to a new country and here we are, and you don't know why you've employed me. But today we joke about it because he honestly today is one of my greatest advocates across the business and in front of the board.
And did he help
truly
you find
understands.
a house when you moved to Ireland?
He did. He did. I forgot about that even. So we were really struggling because what we have found in Ireland is that one of the challenges, not being Irish, is that a lot of what you do in private and business life depends on who you know. Yeah. And who you perhaps are related to. So that's quite difficult as an outsider to get in. And we just could not find a place to rent anywhere and ended up being in hotel accommodation for 12 weeks.
Wow.
When we moved across to Ireland. And so at one point I went out of desperation to John and said, listen, please, you really need to help me. This is killing me, you know. And he immediately jumped in and said, no, I know a guy. Which is exactly what you need when you are a blow-in to Ireland. You know, he knew a guy and he got us into accommodation, you know, within the next week. So it's, you know, when you move into a country and you have the CEO that's willing to take on your pain and help you get out of that situation, that really builds a healthy level of trust and gives you an idea of the culture of the company.
Brilliant, brilliant. Just for people who don't know then, in your own words, what is it that Aerogen does?
So Aerogen specializes in respiratory drug delivery systems, aerosolized drug delivery. So essentially we have the delivery device that can take any liquid medication, whether it be antibiotics or whatever the case may be, and we deliver that through an aerosolized technology that John has created. And that is unique to the market. There is nobody else on the market that has the technology that we have, even 25 years in. And this improves the patient outcome, you know, because you can have up to 6 times more medication delivered through our delivery device versus the historical or traditional ways of medication delivery.
So it turns the liquid into air molecules as such.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And for people, I suppose, who have a respiratory issue, in other words, an issue with the lungs, getting those air molecules into the lung as opposed to just digesting a liquid, the benefits and the effectiveness and the speed of everything is just phenomenal.
It really, and in a lot of cases, it is life-saving technology. Yeah. Because whereas, you know, if the problem is in the lungs and somebody is on a respirator that is breathing for them, you need the medication to go directly to the source of the problem. So giving antibiotics through an IV line, so, you know, is going into the bloodstream and then eventually making its way to the lungs. Whereas what John has created is a device, a plate that essentially vibrates 124,000 times per second. And that turns the liquid into a vapor that goes directly into the lungs and also reaches the lowest portions of the lungs, which other devices, you know, most of the medication is getting stuck in the back of the throat.
Yeah.
And reaching perhaps the upper levels, the upper lobes of the lungs. And so you don't get the medication to those really, really ill patients that can't even breathe for themselves. You know, you can't get the medication to where it needs to go.
And the new products that's being developed, you know, I know we can't really get into them too much because they haven't come to market yet, as they say, but the core of where they have come from, the reason for making those products, I think is just so beautiful. You know, it really says so much about the company. There's businesses out there that'll make something because they want to make this product, and it's like, now you need this product because I wanted to make it, so go and buy this, and they don't get it. And then other businesses will go and say, okay, we can see there's a gap in the market, so we're going to make this product. And what Aerogen are doing at the moment is they're saying there just is a need for this product for people out there in society. It mightn't be massive demand, but there's still people who need this. So let's just try and make it.
Yeah.
And that's what I love.
It is, and it's for the most vulnerable of patients, right? So premature babies. Mm-hmm. And so, John just really has a passion for changing things, for his way of thinking is there has to be a better way of doing this. So the current treatment, I won't go into too much, of course, but the current treatment is really invasive and it's really traumatic for these premature babies that, are maybe only weighing 600 grams. And it's also traumatic for the parents that are watching their premature baby in a life or death situation. So, John really has this philosophical vision and mission that really filters through to the rest of the organization, that we exist, and what I do, what the person on the production line, everything that we do every day is for the patient, is to get more of the required treatment to the patients that need it the most. And that really gives you a purpose to work for and to work within. And I think that really defines a lot of the culture within Aerogen, because we do really believe that we are working for the better outcomes for patients.
And powerful words as well. We exist for, and for an organization to ask that question themselves. As an organization, what do you really exist for and who's benefiting? Back in January, you were here availing of our green screen studio, and you were doing videos for the team, and you were talking about so many things that just fascinated me, but it was gearing people up for the year and the expectations and so on. And obviously it's really important to set goals for the year, and everyone clearly knows what those expectations are. But talk to me about, you were talking about macro enablement versus micro enablement. Can you explain that?
So this is a concept that we've been able to develop over the last 12 months within Aerogen, because of the enablement platform that we have in place and the data that we can collect. So I've realized over time that when we are selling with a macro view or marketing with a macro view, you are marketing and selling to different segments. And that's the traditional way. That's pretty much how everybody in the world markets and sells today, is that you identify your segments that have the most potential for your business and you go after those segments. But you're still thinking of the segment as a group of people that have something in common, right? And in the commercial world, it's a group of people that buy with the same buying psychology, that buy in the same way and buy for the same reasons. And what I realized is that we have the capability, and this was one of the areas of development for all of the vendors that we work for, that we can collect individual behavior patterns. And so it's a concept of micro enablement, but also precision marketing and precision selling. So you are selling to that particular individual based on their behavior at every touch point that you have across the omnichannel offering as a company. So we can now look at wherever marketing is interacting with the customer or sales, we can look at the website, we can look at social media, we can look at microsites that we've created with budget impact tools that we've created. So all of these touch points that we have with the customer, we can look at, analyze, and recognize their individual behaviors. So even within a segment, you've got, thousands of individuals with different personality types, different ways of thinking, and we can look at those and identify for that particular individual within that sector, within that account or hospital in our case, this is their behavior and this is what their behavior is telling us. And then we can send them on one of maybe 6 different customer pathways based on their behavior. And so when they get to the next touch point on that pathway, we do the same. We evaluate what they're interested in, what is driving their buying decision, and then redirect them on perhaps one of 4 pathways from there. So it's really getting down to an individual personality type and buying psychology, which we've never been able to do in commercial up until this point with the technology that we had available.
And what's the typical window of the buying journey time-wise?
It depends what your product is. It depends what you're selling. And it depends also on how effective you're selling. So at Aerogen, for example, before we launched the Pulse platform, which is our singular enablement platform, our buying cycle was 167 days long. And 12 months in, when we took the next measurement, we had already reduced that sales cycle from 167 days to 64 days.
Wow.
So it really does, it's determined the customer journey and how long it takes them to get to that point of placing their first order is hugely dependent on my first, what I term as my sales success formula, is really the amount of activities that you're doing in the right accounts at the right time with the right people, multiplied by the quality of the delivery at each one of those activities and touch points. And then you divide that by the amount of time over which you act out or you perform those activities. Subtract the distractions.
It's so mathematical.
And that gives you your revenue growth. So that's the end of the formula. So it's activities multiplied by the quality, divided by the time, subtract the distractions.
Okay.
And that's all you need for revenue growth and success. But it also shortens, it creates the shortest customer journey.
Yeah. And if someone is, let's say someone is making jewelry at home, right? And they want to, they're doing and it could be jewelry, it could be making candles, whatever, just a small homegrown business where they want to start really kind of selling stuff, not just going to a market every Saturday in town or something. Just in terms of even getting the basics right, what advice would you be giving to someone to try and really open up the market for themselves and sell their products?
I think in that scenario, when you are starting up, it's important to do the segmentation. So don't think about precision marketing and precision selling at all at that point. Just really identify where are the segments that you are going to get the most traction in the shortest space of time. And then from when you've identified where those customers are, you need to understand why they buy. What is their buying psychology? What is going to make them buy your jewelry or your candle over and above Joe Soap that's selling candles, in opposition to you? And from there, it's really a case of when you understand why they buy, how they buy, you've got to make it easy for them to buy from you. And they have to know that you're there. So, for a small business starting out, I would say that the easiest platform and the best way to get exposure and for just your target market to be aware of you is obviously a website or social media at this point, which is, a relatively low cost tool that is so impactful in just the way that people buy today versus how maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, how people bought. So we really have these technological luxuries at our disposal, and you need to use them wisely because obviously cost containment is a huge consideration when you're starting out. So use the platforms that are going to give you the highest level of exposure to your target segment. Understand how they buy and make it easy for them to buy from you. So if there are tools available today that enable e-commerce, so it will enable somebody to buy off your website that might cost you €200 a year. So it's not a crippling cost that will make it so easy for people to buy from you, and they can buy it when they see it. And then it's just up to you to present your product in a way that speaks to the reasons why people will buy your jewelry or your candles.
Brilliant. And even it reminds me of Amazon during the buying journey there. They reduced one page. So I think they brought it from maybe 4 pages of selecting the product, actually you've now paid for it, to 3 pages. And they noticed that there was a huge uptake in sales by just making the journey faster for people. And it was even giving them, to be frank, less time to think about. And I remember a few years ago, I put something in the basket and then I go on to the next page. Then I go on to the next page again. Then I'd be like, now, do I really need it? Maybe I'll leave it for a few months. But then when I just got onto the 3rd page, hit that button, bang, done. I was like, okay, yeah, grand. It's because I can be indecisive. It's great. It's been purchased. I know I need it, so it's on the way. You mentioned Pulse, which is the growth strategy system that you have in the organization for developing and so on. And you've talked about behavioral methods and so on in the organization. What do you see as the next pathway of growth? I know you've spoken before about AI integration and so on. Like, would that be the real big elephant in the room, shall we say, that needs to be tackled and implemented within organizations for global success?
I think for us, we still really getting to understand precision selling and precision marketing better, and what the power of that really is, because I think that we are at the infancy stage of really understanding how powerful that will be going forward. So for me, that's the next immediate thing. And, for those that are listening that haven't thought about that before, haven't looked into it or investigated it, that would be what I would say is the next best thing for growth for those that haven't started on that journey. But then, the use of AI, we do really need to understand that better. And I think that, there are a lot of software companies that have got really excited and created a huge hype around the use of AI and where we should be using it and trying to sell us products that are driven by it. But I'm still really cautious about that because the legislation hasn't caught up to where AI and Gen AI particularly is. We do across the business use predictive AI, we use iterative AI, and we have since the very start of the Pulse platform. So Gen AI is really the 3rd generation or type of AI and different way of using it. And I can see a lot of use cases for it, and we are already adopting quite a few, but really right now that's about gaining efficiency and also effectiveness in a sense, because you are saving time with menial tasks like writing an email or creating a pitch deck or a PowerPoint presentation, and now we have Gen AI that can listen. We record our customer interactions, the conversations that we're having. The Gen AI will open up marketing brochures that you did not have open in your workspace when you started talking to the customer. Yeah. So the AI is listening and can push content to you to say the customer asked you this question and you didn't know the answer. Okay. So here's the brochure that gives you the answer. Wow. So we have that enabled, and that's a great effectiveness tool because you help the customer make a buying decision a lot sooner if you can be absolutely relevant to the customer and, of course, answer their questions. Then another way of using it is that during the call, AI is listening, it brings up a call summary and also automatically creates an email to that customer to say, thanks for the discussion today. These are the highest points and these are the 2 action points that came out of our meeting. And so, of course, we need human evaluation to see that it's all accurate. But that is simply a push of a button, and that's earlier when I was talking about you have to make the tools, the enablement tools, easy for the team to use. You have to automate as much as you possibly can, and Gen AI is great for doing that. Of helping our sellers be more productive in terms of spending more time selling rather than doing admin or creating PowerPoint presentations that they don't need to create from scratch, So we have that capability also for them within the touch of a button to say, I'm going to see this audience. This is the level of physician that will be in the audience. I want to talk about this topic. Click the button and the PowerPoint presentation is automatically surfaced for you. So I think that there is still a lot that we can use Gen AI for once we are more comfortable with the data protection and your IP protection, because that's the point that nobody can give security on right now, in terms of really being secure that even for the 20 seconds that your data goes into your Gen AI tool, whichever one you're using, it's out there for 20 seconds, and then it gets deleted, and the content comes back to you. But for those 20 seconds, you're still at risk. So for me, I'm not at that point where I will just jump on the bandwagon and get hyped up by the excitement around it. It needs to make sense from a security point of view as well for the company.
Yeah, because we can see now in hindsight, if we look back with social media apps that were out there and so on, the amount of privacy breaches that took place with technology, and AI is growing so much faster than those apps and platforms did years ago, that I think really, you're right. We need to sort out the privacy from the get-go.
Yeah, we could get ahead of ourselves, because it is truly exciting what AI can do. And of course, there is also the other side of the coin where people are concerned. Will we still need salespeople if AI is selling on the company's behalf? But that's, I'm a firm believer that will not happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just enable, hopefully.
The customers still want to deal with people that have creativity and intuition.
We all know how frustrating it is ringing up and getting bots when you actually just want to talk to someone and explain your individual problem, that it's not just something in their frequently asked questions. Finally, Sam, different sort of question for you, but if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self?
I would definitely tell my younger self that you've got this. You are stronger than you think you are. You are more competent than some people will have you believe. Don't believe them. Don't believe anybody that tells you that something you are passionate about is not possible. Just go for it. If you believe that it's possible, make it happen. And primarily, I guess, from my experience with abuse, don't ever let anybody make you believe that you are less than who you are. You know your character, you've built your character over time, and trust in your knowledge of knowing who you are as a person, and don't let anybody else make you believe any less.
Brilliant. Sam, thank you so much.
Thanks, Garry.